All right. Welcome to the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting. This is meeting number 37 for FY 2020. However, we have begun FY 21. It's July 13th, Monday evening, 7 p.m., and we are coming to you remotely pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law. That's chapter 30, section 18. And we're going to review the agenda. Tonight we'll be reviewing and approving past minutes. Then we're going to have discussion of AFC business, including but not limited to electing new officers, a chair and a vice chair, going through the remaining minutes for FY20, taking care of end of year transfers to close out the business of FY20. We can do a discussion and review of the annual town meeting and any recommendations on town meeting, the conducting of town meeting, review of AFC routines, any recommendations for AFC routines in the coming years. I'd like the committee to talk about administrative support, some ideas for recruiting and the skills and tasks and next steps for recruiting and admin assistant for the committee. Then it's future draft agendas, the chairman and committee liaison reports, any public reminders for the viewers, and then we will adjourn. So with that, I am going to go ahead and jump to discussion of AFC business for new officers for FY21. And I'm wondering if we have a nomination for a new chair of the committee for FY21.
I nominate Sean Keogh for the position of chair for the finance committee for the following 2 years.
Do we have a second? Oh, that's Mike for seconds.
Yeah.
It's concurrent.
Okay, so Beth nominates, Mike seconds. Is there any discussion?
I think he'll do an excellent job.
Okay. All right, we have to do a voice vote because we're remote. I'll start at the top of our attendee list here. Jody Hensley, yes. If somebody can count out. Mike Beretti.
Yes.
Beth Blumberg.
Yes, Blumberg, yes.
Sean Keogh.
Abstain?
Okay. Andrew.
Bradley, yes.
And then Paul. Paul Hugo.
You're muted.
Did he mute himself or did I mute him?
He is muted. I don't know who muted him.
Okay. Paul, and I'm not getting him in a tile here either.
Okay, I'm yes.
Yes, thank you, Paul.
Why is this one different than Zoom?
Yeah, I know, it's quite different. And then Terry.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's everyone on the call. So was that a 601?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Sean. I'm turning the gavel over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Jody.
You are welcome. I'm just very happy to have you stepping up. You've done a great job with the committee and keeping us going on our minutes and record. And I'm happy to support you in the upcoming year.
And thank you, Jody, for doing your job.
Thanks, Beth.
Yes.
You got handed more than you anticipated when you signed up.
Jody,
It is.
you're the only one who could have gotten us through this year.
Well, it took the team, and I appreciate all the support and everybody hanging in. As I have said before, the committee did its job twice this year, and I think we did a good job. I feel like everybody did a good job. I'm pretty proud of the town for getting through that town meeting and moving us into the next fiscal year in really good shape. So, Sean, I'll turn that over to you now.
Jody, thank you. And yes, you've set a high bar. And I know you have a family event to get back to.
Yes.
So we have a quorum.
Okay.
You know, it's up to you. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. And I will follow up in a week or so and see what you folks all did with tonight's agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jody. Good night.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you, Jody.
Yep. Good night, Mike.
All right.
John,
Yes.
do you want to delay your vice chair pick until next meeting?
Well, I think I'd like to, at this point, just talk about it, right? Because I think folks have concerns based on maybe some of the functions I was performing this year as to whether or not those are functions of the vice chair, like being the person who does all the minutes and stuff
We
like
need
that.
an admin for the minutes.
Yeah, I think we do need to definitely do the best we can to fulfill that role, and then hopefully, we find somebody who wants to do that.
Can
Yes,
I put a
Beth?
person right now that if there's anybody who is listening to our meeting who is interested in a paid position to volunteer for the not a volunteer position, but a paid position for the Advisory Finance Committee, talk to Christy, our town manager.
Yes.
Like advertise to the people who are listening. Maybe.
And
Good
also,
idea.
I was going to hold off until later on, but I also want to remind people that if anyone on the committee would like to do it, but can't justify doing it for free, the bylaw allows the clerk of the committee to be a committee member and to be paid only for being a clerk. So you can't get more than you would have paid a normal clerk. But if anybody on the committee would be willing to do it, but can only justify doing it if they could get paid, you can talk to me about that as well.
Okay, because when we tried to do that 4 years ago, it hit snags.
Okay, well, if that happens, talk to me because the bylaw specifically permits it.
Okay. I do not want to take minutes.
Has to be at 75% of the total, I think, right? We cut down the funds for that,
Yes. Yep.
or do it every other time or something.
Right.
No, I think you still pay the admin. You just ask them to do less tasks. Because we were looking at some extra tasks for the admin.
Okay,
And
extra money.
yeah,
What's the current stipend?
it's Leah, do you know the steps? And
So it's not a stipend, it's an hourly wage. I believe it's an H1. I think the bottom step is 19 and change.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
and the converting curve.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that is a priority, getting that position filled. We have reduced our budget, so we'll have to figure out how that works into it. But I think that would be an excellent first step. So historically, I think we've sort of set the precedent that the vice chair fills that role and then eventually becomes the chair. And that's sort of how it's been established. 2 years in one and 2 years in the other is the thought process. Now that's a significant commitment. So I think, give folks some time to think about it. If they're interested, please reach out and we can talk. I'm assuming we'll have an August meeting because our fall is going to be much busier than past falls, I believe. So, if you have interest or, have any questions, please reach out and we'll try and establish that at our August meeting.
Sean,
Thank you very much.
I don't know if you want this, but I'm again willing to do 1 year, letting the person who comes on only make a 3-year commitment because it would be 1 year vice chair, the way you did it, 1 year vice
Right.
and 2 year of chair.
Keeping that warm. Beth, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Also, I just want to chime in if anyone wants to talk about either, traditionally how either the chair, vice chair, clerk's role have been done in the past. Feel free to talk to me too. I'm willing to talk to anybody to explain how it has worked and to provide any guidance I can.
John, thank you very much. Yeah, I will definitely reach out to you. With this, may I recommend we make a small change to the order of the agenda. Lee is here tonight for a specific purpose, and it is the middle of July, so try not to keep her any longer than we have to. Do you want to go through your request?
Certainly. So the request in front of you this evening has already been approved by the Board of Selectmen, as is required by the the two-prong approach to a transfer. It's for a transfer of $12,812 from the EDC salary and wage account into the electricity budget. The place where the funds are coming from really doesn't have anything to do with where they're going. It just happens that the EDC coordinator obviously resigned mid-year and the job is not being filled, and therefore there's extra money there. It's about $36,500. The electricity budget in itself only funds electricity. What's it's used for, there's about 20 streetlight accounts that it's used for, and it's also used for all municipal buildings. So your fire station, your library, your town hall, your Forbes Municipal Building, all of those general fund type buildings come out of this budget. The only thing that doesn't come out of this budget are the water and sewer pump stations and those type of facilities, and also your school department bills do not come out of this. It's about 1.5 million kilowatts of power per year that get paid out of this, and it's approximately $300,000 for the entire year. We historically try not to increase this budget unless absolutely necessary. Again, it only pays for electricity. It's had, in the past, small reserve interdepartmental transfers every year. It's really hard to keep a handle on this budget because, again, there's so many buildings and so many usage of electricity throughout the town. This year, we did have the Forbes Municipal Building come back online, which I think somewhat attributed to this overrun. But next year, starting with this past, this month exactly, the rates that we're paying are going to go down a little bit. So hopefully we'll be okay. If not, towards the end of the fiscal year, we'll have to figure that out and maybe have another transfer or figure out at town meeting if we need a transfer to come in. But right now, the $12,000 is all we need to get through the rest of the fiscal year.
All right, thank you. Beth, did you have a question?
Yeah, so when we were doing a lot of planning in the budget, trying to make, to find money, one of my concerns is that we found this money already and talked about it being used for another purpose. I'm just concerned about that particular, I mean, I know it's just going from one pocket to another, but I thought this position was kind of used as part of the make the budget more whole before we went to town meeting.
So are you talking about the approximately $700,000 in revenue that we were going to have a shortfall for? So certainly this position and amongst all the other items that people were anticipating either turning back or not filling positions, this part was definitely a position that was in that number.
Yeah.
But in order to do a transfer, you have to come from somewhere. So it doesn't, I guess it doesn't matter in the real big picture. It doesn't matter if it comes from this line item or from the reserve fund, which is funded by free cash.
Right.
It has to come from somewhere.
Okay, but you feel comfortable that even though we took that $700,000 to help smooth the budget through, or, we took money and said that it would work, that we're not double spending this exact same. I mean, that's my only concern. I mean, I totally understand that it's like you have an empty pocket.
Right. So this position is still open and will remain open into next year. And it's sort of next year's allotment for this position that has been used for next year's budget and not what has been saved so far this year.
Well, so
right? I think that's the difference.
I thought that this year we were having the shortfall of the 700,000, and that this year we said, hey, here's some of the places we know money can come from.
Right. That's absolutely true. But there are other funds that remain at the end of the fiscal year that we weren't anticipating. So this $12,000 is fine, honestly.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, as long as you feel comfortable that it didn't get accidentally double spent.
No.
Good. Okay.
No, it did not.
Thank
Gotcha.
you.
Thank you, Beth. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question on a different subject for Leah. Leah, I know you guys have been busy, but I'm going to ask again in anticipation of what's going to be discussed for the fall. Has your team and the town manager been looking at alternative financing possibilities?
So we have not come together at this point as of yet. We will do that. As you can well imagine, it's very difficult to get together, but it's a busy time of the year for us. So, but
Okay.
we understand your request. I completely know where you're coming from, and it's on our radar.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize. I'd like to make the motion for you, but I don't have a copy of it in front of me. If I just make a motion to transfer $12,000 from the EDC to electricity, is that sufficient?
Can we use the number 12,812?
Yes. Okay. I make the motion that we transfer $12,812 from the EDC salary line item to the electricity line item.
Perfect.
Bradley, second.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll do a voice vote. Okay, Michael Beretti,
Yes.
Beth Blumberg,
Blumberg, yes.
Paul Hugel,
Yes.
Terry McGoldrick,
Yes.
Andrew Bradley,
Bradley, yes.
and Sean Keogh, yes. That is 6-0-0. All right.
Sean, can I ask another question of Leah?
Sure. She had her hand on her mouse. Go ahead there, Paul.
Still there. I think the answer is no to this, but is there any more visibility into state funding or for either schools or COVID or anything else?
So we have not heard anything as of yet. We were really hoping to hear more on the revenue side as far as whether or not we're going to be able to use any of that 1.6 towards revenue shortfalls. And we have not heard anything out of committee on that. So, I mean, that was back on, I think, June 7th that they were talking about that, and we still haven't heard anything, and it's been a month. So obviously they're just speaking off the cuff, I'm assuming there must be some sort of opposition to doing that. So, so we haven't heard anything yet for that. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, but
All right.
we'll keep, our eyes out, and we don't want to use that money unless we absolutely have to. If we can use it for revenue, if we have expenditures, we're going to have to use it in the fall. We'll see what happens. So,
Okay.
all right.
Any other questions before she logs off?
Yes, please. Leah, based on the slight amount of opening that the town has had, do you have any sense of how the revenues are going to do as a result? Are we too in the weeds to see it yet?
Let me look at my crystal ball. So we're what, 13 days into the fiscal year. So I would be absolutely foolish if I answered that question.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, there's absolutely no way for me to know. We don't know what's going to happen in the fall if there's a resurgence. So we're going to do our best to keep our eyes on the revenues and projections and see what happens.
So what will you do revenues for this July? Like, what's the delay? For the businesses that just sort of picked up, what's the delay before they actually pay you something?
So there's a lot of different things, right? There's building permits and such. If maybe a company was going to expand that decides that they're not going to expand, there's no building permit revenue for that. The hotels and motels, from what I understand, DoubleTree is still closed.
Okay.
So there's no revenue from hotels. The businesses, the meals tax, your restaurants are open 25 to 50% of capacity. So therefore, the hotel motels, the meals tax, which are really big revenues of your local receipts. Our local receipts are about $10 million, and of those $2 million, a little bit over $2 million is just hotel, motel, and meals tax. So
Okay.
your permits and licensing and permits, or building permits and such, are $1 million. So when those things take a hit, I mean, how are they going to come back? Are they going to come back strong? Or are they
Right.
going to come back weak? And depends on your hotels and your businesses, and who starts building and who puts projects on hold. So
Thank you.
earnings on investment. I mean, the Fed isn't raising interest rates. So to expect to collect what we collected last year at $600,000 is just not going to happen.
Okay.
So there's so many things that are out of our control that the best we can do is simply to try to project as closely as possible what monies are going to come in.
That's what I was wondering, in terms of if you had some kind of special crystal ball that gave you businesses are open at 3/4 capacity or 1/4 capacity, Thank you.
Right.
Well, yeah, thank you
Okay.
very much. Have a good
You're
night.
welcome, Sean. Can I just ask a quick question for you, Sean? Do you have, so tomorrow morning when I get into work, if I forward you a copy of the requested transfer, do you have the ability to sign it and scan it back to me?
I will make that happen.
Okay. I mean, I have the vote, and obviously I was here, so I'm not worried about it, but I like my paper. So. All
Thank
right.
you, Lee. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your chairmanship.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
In case you can't sign or do something, until you get your permanent chair, vice chair, rather. Would that
What's
help
that?
you? You want an interim vice chair until you get your.
Yeah, we'll be good. I think it'll
Okay.
be fine. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you, Lee.
Who's taking the minutes tonight?
You know what?
I'll do it.
Oh, Michael, thank you very much.
I've done it
Thank you.
before, Sean. Why not, right?
You've got experience.
Yeah.
So if I look at the agenda, so I think the next topic would be the minutes. And I believe we have 3 sets. I sent out 6/11 and 6/15 today, and then I believe Jody had sent out 6/20 with the rest of the material for this meeting. Are people comfortable discussing those and voting on those?
I make a motion to accept the minutes of, I think 6/11 was the first date.
Yes.
Bradley,
Okay.
second.
Bradley. Thank you, Andrew. All right, we'll take a voice vote. Michael Beretti.
Yes.
All right. Beth Bloomberg.
Lumberg, yes.
Paul Hugel.
Yes.
Terry McGoldrick.
Which one was this?
June 11th.
June 11th. It came out around like noon or 1 today.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Terry. Andrew Bradley.
Bradley, yes.
And Sean Keogh, yes. All right. 6-0-0. Meeting minutes for 6/15.
May I ask if there's a reason not to do these other two together?
Just to give people a chance to say yikes, typo, anything.
Or
We can ask that as we pull them up.
I was only at one of the 2 meetings. So
Okay.
I'll be voting on the one and abstaining on the other.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of June 15th, 2022.
Bradley, second.
Okay, thank you. All right, Michael Beretti,
Yes.
Beth Blumberg,
Lumberg, yes.
Paul Hugel,
Yes.
Terry McGoldrick,
Yes.
Andrew Bradley,
Bradley, yes.
and Sean Keogh, yes. Okay, also 600. And
make a-
the, oop, go ahead.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of 6/20, 2020. Did I do that right? Yeah, June 20th, 2020.
Do we have a second?
Bradley, second.
Okay, thank you. Michael Brady,
Yes.
Beth Blumberg,
Blumberg, yes.
Paul Hugel,
Yes, I was there for the first part of the meeting and I viewed the rest of it, so I'm confident in saying yes.
okay, thank you. Terry McGoldrick,
Abstain. I wasn't there.
okay. Andrew Bradley,
Bradley, yes.
okay, and Sean Keogh abstain. So that is 402. All right.
That's not a quorum, though. Can we approve without the quorum?
We have a quorum. The 6 of us.
Yeah, 6 people are present. You don't need a quorum of a vote.
So
Okay.
we have a majority of the quorum has voted for this minutes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So next on the agenda is review of annual town meeting and recommendations. And I don't know if it makes sense, John, for you to start here as the moderator of the meeting and get your thoughts, and then sort of have others who were there chime in.
Yeah, sure. Also, I mean, since I know it's a relatively light crowd, and I don't know if it'll be even more people in August, it's not that we have to do a full review tonight. As you know, typically I come before the committee at one of the first meetings after the town meeting, and of course that's usually like in April. So here we are in summer to just go over and ask for. Here, I'll turn my camera on because I'm sure everybody wants to see my hair. Let's see if I can do this without blinding you with the light behind my head. But I'll start off with just making a few statements that aren't necessarily related to town meeting, but I wanted to let the committee know that at the conclusion of the town meeting, as you know, 3 terms expire. And so this year, the terms that expired were Mike's, who filled Gary's unfulfilled term, and Beth's and Hank's. And after discussing with the 3 of them, they were all willing to serve. And as you may have seen in some of the emails, I reappointed the 3 of them to new terms. And so I will thank them not only for their past service, but thank them for the continuing on with the committee. I also wanted to let the committee know at the conclusion of the meeting, Jim Driscoll and Terry McGoldrick informed me that they would like to retire from the committee. Jim's been on the committee for 5 years and just wants to sort of move closer to retirement. And Terry's been on the committee for 2 years. I know he's on the phone and graciously has agreed to be part of the quorum tonight since I haven't appointed a replacement yet. But I wanted to publicly thank Jim and Terry for their years of service and for their commitment. I know I have appreciated and watched their participation, and I've appreciated the points of view that they've brought forward. And with that said, I've started the process of looking for 2 people to replace them. So as I said, Jim has 1 year left on his term, and Terry has 2 years left on his term. So I've gotten a few references or recommendations from people, and I'll let not only the listeners know, but also you on the committee, that if you know of anyone who you think would be a good fit for the committee, and given the current circumstances in our country, I'm trying extra hard to try to make sure we at least don't lose ground in the diversity struggle. I've always had difficulty finding people who are from different ethnic backgrounds, but I've started asking a few questions to see if I can find people for that. But I also don't want to lose our geographic, our age, or our gender diversity as well. So I will let anyone know that I'm going to start talking to people, and I'm hoping to make appointments as soon as I can. But with that said, so that's just sort of the nuts and bolts of what I have to do after town meeting. It's really hard to believe it was only like 3 or so weeks ago. But I did want to emphasize that I know when we first started talking about the town meeting postponements, it's like, are we ever going to make this happen? How is it going to work? And I know there were some people who would have maybe, felt better, or, if we if we had done an outdoor town meeting, but I also, as I said in an email to everyone, I wanted to thank the selectmen, the Board of Health, Christy, and everyone else involved in all the discussions. It really made my job a lot easier to not have to feel that I was making the single call of was it appropriate to have a town meeting back in March, April, May, and was it sufficiently safe, and did we have the right safeguards in place to say we could do it in June? And I want to thank everyone involved for pulling together and doing that. And I know I'm sure I'm not the only one who was waiting with bated breath to see how the COVID-19 numbers would be in the week or two after we had about 140 people spread over 100 so people in the spread over 3 rooms. And I was glad to see that my recollection is the Board of Health reports in the 2 weeks after the town meeting is the town only reported 2 new cases. And given that I wasn't contacted, I'm not sure, I don't think either of them were related to town meeting. So certainly thankful for that, and thankful for the work that you on the committee put into it. With that said, I think those of us who were involved in figuring out how to do a 3-room town meeting, I'm sure we all learned a few things. I know a few times I misheard because of the sort of muddy sound in the gym. What was going on? Nothing happened out of order because of it, but I had to be stopped and reminded of what the person actually said a few times. And although I'm hoping against hope that we don't have to do it again, the good news is if we have to do it again, we know what worked, we know a few things that could go better, and we know it can be done. So I feel helpful about that. So I don't want to go on and on at length other than to say thank you about a bazillion times for getting it all to happen. And so I'll just open it up to questions, or if you don't want to talk about it right here, right now, if anyone has any questions, whether it's a voter listening at home, watching the tape, watching it on Westborough TV later on, or even committee members or anyone, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, moderator at town.westborough.ma.us, you can send me email, but I'm certainly willing to hear about, any things you thought worked particularly well, anything that could be better. So I can add it to my list of things that I've thought about or that others have already told me. So I'll stop now. You're blinded.
John, thank you. Quick question, as someone who wasn't at the meeting, was that in terms of any of the articles, were there any surprises, anything that happened that wasn't expected at the meeting?
No, I mean the outcomes were all as recommended, and I think there ended up being no differences of opinions in terms of the selectmen and advisory finance committee. It's always a question of where are we going to spend our time talking about things. So I'm not sure it's surprising. I mean, I know that myself, given the current climate in the country, I was not surprised that a few questions got raised about, the police department. It wasn't the question that I thought was going to be brought up, and I let the conversation go because I didn't want people to feel that they couldn't speak their piece. But I think it got resolved, and I think all the sides of the question got brought to bear. And when the question started to gravitate a little further afield from just buying police cruisers, we reined it back in. And then, of course, we all know that affordable housing and affordable housing in general versus affordable housing for senior citizens is a topic for which there is a lot of varied opinion and varied ways of how people think it's best to solve the problem. But again, as I've found, one of the geniuses of town meeting is that we, even in a hot, sticky room on a late June afternoon, people were able to make their case. There was discussion back and forth. We came, we saw, we talked, we voted. And I think that although there is always work to be done to try to continually improve the ways we solve problems, I think the voters, did what they were there to do, and they voted the way it should be voted. So no real surprises.
All right, John, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or any comments?
I'd like to comment, this is one that John cannot fix, I don't believe, at least not within budget, is that the room was ridiculously hot. And, I think people were amazing to stay there, the whole time with their masks on, sort of internally feeling hotter. So people were really patient. And the other thing that was nice was the shortened talk time and the non-repeats. So we didn't have people like I'm doing tonight, it seems like, coming back and talking over and over again. So that was also
Yes.
kind of
Yes, I think we can't thank the voters enough for sort of keeping on the topic and keeping their points. And I didn't really have to use the clock all that much. I think, and I will say one of the things that we know and we knew going into it is that we needed a large room with a lot of volume of air to make it safe. And unfortunately, the two gyms are, of course, the largest rooms, and they're also not air conditioned. So I do know that the senior citizens, people with medical disabilities or medical conditions that were quote required or able to sit in the auditorium. I heard it was nice and cool in there. So, but I will thank all the voters who, even if they felt they could have qualified for the auditorium, stayed in place and stayed focused. And as I said in one of my emails to my fellow moderators, I think a key view of the town meeting being successful was that COVID-19 didn't become the show, and it even didn't become a sideshow. Once we started, it was hot, but we still did our business the way we normally do, and it never devolved from the fact that we were there to act on the warrant. And I think that's the true testament, not only to the preparation, but to the voters' sense of purpose.
John, this is Paul. I just want to say that the document you produced, embodying the planning and then the execution were amazing. I'm sure other towns are asking you for copies of that because it's a document that should live on in history, isn't it?
Well, actually, as moderators, we've all been working on them together. So I'm sure some of the stuff that you had that I wrote that you liked was probably that I had cobbled together from others. But yes, we've been sharing a lot and meeting with each other. But thank you. I was pleased to see that so many people actually read it and followed it, and that everybody understood it. So thanks for me knowing that the couple of nights I spent trying to edit it down and getting that first page into a 1 page of bullet points of key points was appreciated. Thank you, Paul.
Amazing.
So this is Andrew. I think one question that I had that lingered, and I know that it didn't change the town business, was an understanding of how many people were in the rooms that folks couldn't see, and by extension, how many people were in the gym. And by that, I don't mean a count of 107 people, but there was only one time where there was a vote where it was not unanimous in one of the side rooms, and it was not unanimous in the gym. And mathematically speaking, if the side room had a lot more people than the gym, there was a possibility the vote didn't carry. But not knowing the general scope, was it about 20 people? Was it about 50 people? I think there was a sense of not realizing how many people's voices or votes were counting in other rooms.
I'm actually trying to look that up right now, so just give me a second. But I do want to explain the thought process that I did going into it, and that's to make sure that I knew the math. So the first count I can find, and Wendy might have sent me ones otherwise, but at around 1 o'clock, so that's right about when we were getting to the budget, the count that Wendy had texted me when I had asked her was that we had about 137 people in total. There were 111 in the gym, 1 in the band room, and 25 in the auditorium. So that's the process. And you're right, I will make a note of perhaps announcing that every once in a while. But I wanted to let you know the way I had worked this out in my head, and I had spoken to the town clerk about it, is that if we had a majority vote, it didn't matter how many votes were in each room. if every room had the same majority. And if we had a 2/3 vote, if every room was 2/3, it didn't matter on the count as long as it was clearly 2/3. And so that's why I had asked Ben in the band room and Lisa in the auditorium to report, as I was reporting, an approximate count of how close was it. And at no point in no point, especially during the 2/3 votes, was it not a clear 2/3 majority. And so I've made a note that if we do have to do it in 3 rooms again where we can't see, that I occasionally try to get a rough count so people understand that when when the auditorium reports out 2 or 3 in the negative, how close is that to 2/3? And if we had 25 people there, 2 or 3 in the negative,
Yeah.
it's not even close to 2/3. So, but that's a good point of at least announcing the count. I know Wendy and I were keeping track of it. But in my haste to keep the meeting moving, I neglected to announce it, but it's a good point that I could and I should.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that it just brings us to point that there was an official documented count somewhere, but I didn't hear of anything read into record, and I might just be inventing a technicality that doesn't exist. But I'm glad to know that it was being documented and counted somewhere. And again, I never doubted the efficacy of it or the accuracy of it, but it just wasn't transparent in the fullest sense of the term.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, just historically, typically as moderator, my job is to declare a quorum and to record and declare the votes. The town clerk is constantly keeping in touch with the people out front, checking people in to know how many people have come in, and I rely on communicating with her a lot of times during when there's downtime while things are happening to make sure that in this case we didn't need a quorum, but making sure that I knew how many people were where and what the total was. And I'll try to remember to let Wendy know that it would be helpful if in her official notes that she recorded how many people they believe were in each room.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I just want to say I had the same, I mean, it's a math person thing. I had the same thought of like how many people are in the band room. I mean, like the idea now in retrospect that there was basically your co-moderator and one person is like, oh, that totally changes like the thinking about the numbers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, so it turned out that if we, since most votes were very close to unanimous, pretty much we could go by the 111 was by far like almost a super majority, and we could go by how many dissenting votes there were. But the point is well taken that if we do have to do it again, and if we do it such that we can't have visibility to see how many people are in each room, to essentially occasionally record how many people are in each room, just so people have a sense of that. So that's a good point. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah. But it flowed very smoothly.
Yes, I was only surprised that A, my drinking water because it's so hot didn't make me have to go to the bathroom, and B, that I actually didn't pass out wearing my mask for 4. I had my mask on for I'd say about 8.5 out of 9 hours in a row because I got to the high school, not bragging or anything. I got to the high school at 9:30 in the morning to make sure that I didn't see anything that I hadn't thought about. So.
Hey, thank you, John.
John, I did have one more of the little nit, and again, it's such a small nit that, but the fact that I'm bringing it up shows just how much went right there. So please take it in that spirit. It would be helpful if there was a consistent language to describe the unanimity or the majority or something, even if it's just talking in phases. But many times, the count back from the room would be yes or majority or unanimous or most or something. But obviously, a standardized framework would serve transparency again. I think a little bit better.
I thought I was hearing the moderators echo back the words that John was using of majority or unanimous.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to keep it to unanimous or almost unanimous, and I tried to summarize approximately how many dissenting votes I saw. And again, legally, all it comes down to for almost all of the motions was it, and again, this is going back to, I realized that, we didn't have electronic voting where we had a specific number. So I was trying to record for the people in the room, like, was it just barely unanimous, of which we had none that were just barely unanimous because we didn't have to count, or were they unanimous or were they nearly unanimous? And then I would try to call out, that I would see 5, and I was trying to count the number of raised voting slips I had. So, but the real reason for that, for most motions, I would just have to declare it's a majority vote. And then for the cases where legally it has to be a 2/3 vote, I have to declare a 2/3 vote. I was trying to consistently provide a little extra information, but I will try to come up with more standardized terms and maybe practice them with my deputy moderators, so we can come up and clearly say either say clearly unanimous or nearly unanimous with seeing approximately n dissents and whatever. And so, yeah, that's a good point.
And I have to say, you were very regular about it. It was really the support moderators, and one got the sense they weren't given guidance as to sort of like the bucket of terms they should go for. Because it really seemed a lot more.
Because I didn't think of it until
No, I understood, and this is really just thinking ahead for future. I thought it went really well overall.
Thank you. Yep, thanks.
John, I have one more completely different topic comment, which is that I was actually a little bit disturbed that some of the guest speakers, who happen to be people in town, committee members, office members, whatever, would come up to the podium to speak and vote with their hand rather than with their voting slip. And I really felt like being like, no, like if you're standing in front of everybody and you're voting and you're a select person, like have your voting slip.
Yeah, good point. I will make extra care to remind people to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, John. All right, so our next topics I'm showing on the agenda are review of AFC routines, which I don't know precisely what Jody had in mind there. I don't know if folks are okay passing over that one, and then we can discuss that again. Maybe I'm assuming we're going to have an August meeting because we're going to really need to hit the ground running for this fall. So are people comfortable pushing that one as an August item, or do people have things they want to discuss in terms of AFC routines?
Is there a way to like raise our hands or let you know if we want to talk or not talk? Like you can't see us nodding our heads because I mean I'm visible, but as far as I can see most people are a picture of themselves or a blank, and I feel like it's got to be really crazy for you if nobody responds.
Yeah, I don't see a raise hand feature here in Google Meet, so I think maybe I know that you're not supposed to deliberate in the chat, but maybe using the chat as I know you've done earlier tonight, Beth, to just say I have a question, and then just asking the chair or the vice chair or somebody helping run the meeting to just say, who wants to talk. That way that's what we try to do at work, just so we end up with when there's a gap where someone takes a breath, 3 people don't start at once. So maybe that's just something to talk about amongst the committee to see how they want to try to convey the fact that they'd like to speak.
Oh, that's a good idea. Go ahead, Paul.
Sean, just another reason to delay, I think, is that if we do get two more committee members, it'd be good to review whatever procedures we might be thinking about changing or reinforcing, with those people.
Yeah. As I was thinking about it, I mean, since you're going to talk to Jody, Sean, when she gets freed up, ask her which of our routines. The only one that I could think of that might be useful shorter term, and you don't have to talk about it tonight, but just to start thinking about, is I know we didn't always do it back when I was on the committee, but I know for the past couple of years, the committee's tried to lay out a tentative calendar of dates for almost the whole year that has, like when do you kick into Monday, Thursday mode? If you have to do that, when are the, check for holidays for the first Monday of the month for the off months, and then when do you kick in for preparing for annual town meeting, just to look for people who are planning either vacations or business trips. Not that you can't take them then, but just to recognize when the meetings would probably be. And that's not something that has to be discussed now, but maybe it's something that some subset of you could take a stab at looking at the calendar from now through next June and just trying to figure out what the dates are and having it ready to talk about at the August meeting.
No, that's a good point, John. Yeah, because I think I can take a stab at that, and then there's always a couple of holidays in the fall that fall on the Mondays and Thursdays, and, do we properly remember which ones those are? And then when we count the number of meetings, if we start after Labor Day, are we going to have enough meetings to really get everything done that we need to before an October special town meeting, if it's, sort of that much more going on than typical?
Yeah, I think a key question for you as chair, or maybe for Jody to follow up as past chair, would be to, talk to Christy or Leah or whatever to find out, as soon as possible, make sure you guys are in the loop for the early draft warrants for whenever, the October town meeting is going to be. And to get it, just so you can quickly size up the length of it, and then just figure out how you can do the best you can to be ready.
Okay. No, that sounds good, John. Thank you very much. Any other comments or suggestions there?
We have any prep that we know about to do on things that got postponed? Can we get anything out of the way with some of those motions, or do we just wait till we see what comes up on the warrant?
I think the problem with looking at, if we make some assumptions about the items that we passed over, the problem is we don't know what the revenue is yet that's going to be able to support those. Are further cuts going to be required in the fall? So without having that side of the equation, I don't know if there's anything we're going to be able to do prior to August. It's possible if we learn anything, or Christy or Leah know anything, then we can distribute that, and that may change the August meeting from, hey, a kickoff meeting with, sort of reviewing, to actually putting together timelines and discussing when we need to get people in front of us. So I think it's, at this point, it's kind of to be determined, is my thought.
That's totally fair. I mean, I guess because the other piece of it, as you said, is who knows what the revenues are going to do and if there's more decisions for cuts. But that
Right.
was my trying to
Right.
make. The other thing, can I just make one comment? As I put stuff in chat, and this is more to Michael, that the chat should end up getting copied into the minutes. That's what the selectmen decided would be their policy. It's just at the end, just do a copy and paste of the chat into the minutes, if you're comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it. I'll give it a shot and see what happens.
Okay.
We
Copy and
haven't
paste.
really, other than John's comment back to you,
Right.
not seeing anything that's of
Of me.
material
Right.
significance. Yeah.
I'll just address the comment. So I apologize for using the word misleading. What I guess my experience of sitting in the room, John, was I heard this moderator make an announcement and he never said, and I'm the only one in the room. So I populated the room with somebody in my head.
Well,
And
there was at least one voter there.
Okay. The moderator is also a voter.
That's the one voter, I think. I'm not sure. I mean, I wasn't there. I haven't had a chance to touch base with Ben, but I saw him briefly at the end of the meeting, and he told me that for much of the meeting, he was the only one there.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you have to understand that when you can't see the room,
I know.
You populate it, and that's where it was, it was my own assumption of room.
There could have been 5 or 10 people in there and didn't know. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it goes back to Andrew's point. Yes. Giving people a sense of relative numbers in the room, even if they're off by 1 or 2, would have been helpful. So yeah,
It's great information to know there was no one in there, no one besides the moderator, because I was picturing all these non-mask wearing, militants. So
Living in Westborough, right?
So I'm glad they weren't.
Yes. I was actually pleased when I heard that. I think there were only. I think what I heard anecdotally was it maxed out at like 3 people, and I'm not sure if it's that they didn't wear masks or if it's just they went in there because they secretly knew that room was air conditioned. But I'll have to ask Ben to find out.
The draw.
Okay.
But that room also only held like about 16 people by the time we set the chairs up. So And I guess I knew that, and it was in the report, but not everybody knew that. So point well taken about making sure people know relative numbers of how populated these rooms are.
Gotcha. Thank you, John. All right. So admin support, we touched on admin support earlier. I don't know if anybody has any further comments. I think we do want to see who we can find. I will check in and get the actual hourly rate that the individual will receive.
And I think you need to touch base with Christy and tell her to really advertise for it and find out if any of the people who are currently support for other committees or boards is willing to pick up some of our hours.
Right. Right. So we'll see, and it's tough because if we manage to find somebody over the summer, they're really going to hit the ground running in September and have basically 2 meetings a week for 2 months. And so
that happens every time we hire someone.
Yep. Hey, I guess that can be somebody's Christmas fund.
The key is to find somebody who likes taking notes at meetings and who doesn't find it daunting, and then say, "Please, will you do it?" Like me, but I can't do it.
And Sean, I'm willing to admit that I'm one of the people that, if I thought I was getting, I hate doing minutes, and I have to do them for at least one other organization. And I'm selfish enough to think that if I had to do it, at least if I was getting that, whatever that was, $16 or whatever, $19, might pay for a lunch or something. I don't know. I wouldn't feel as like I was taken away from my other income opportunities. So I think that's something to consider, that we pass it around, or anyone that wants to do it and get paid, according to the bylaws. It just makes it less onerous, because it's just so routine. I hate it.
And I will mess up. I am really bad at taking minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So let's look for candidates, and I'll follow up with Christy on that as well. I know that John's saying that that's not a problem for a committee member to do that. I'll reach out. Was it Leah who wasn't sure? I'll talk to Christy and confirm that, and we'll talk about that in August.
Yeah. And so, Sean, I'll send you the actual bylaw, but the bylaw for the Advisory Finance Committee says there shall be, Section 1, there shall be an Advisory Finance Committee consisting of 9 voters of the town, no one of whom shall be a town officer now elected by ballot, or an appointed official, or a town employee. So that you say, like, oh, that can't work. But then it goes on to say, said committee shall choose its own officers and shall serve without pay, except the clerk, who shall receive reasonable compensation for his services. And then, and don't worry about the his, that's because all the bylaws are written that way. Then the last sentence is, the clerk of said committee may or may not be a member of the committee.
Okay.
Our own personal loophole.
It's actually there intentionally, and it was there because there have been times when there have been people on the committee who have been willing to be clerk, but they wanted it clear that they could get paid for it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's, I just remember us going through this before, and you could ask other people and they'll tell you absolutely we can't, but John is the authority, he just read the bylaws, so I don't think we need to.
Yeah, if anybody wants to talk about it, take them my way.
All right. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
All right. So next we have future draft agendas. And I think we touched on this at our June 15th meeting. So here are the items in the June 15th meeting that I have as already future draft agenda items, and maybe we can add to this. The staffing study, review of the tax levy, including bringing in Ed Bain to discuss his paper. And in that one, so is that one something we want to do? It's more of like an off. I mean, do you think we could get him in August? Would that make sense? I throw that out to committee.
I'm going to also ask, now that we don't know what our own financial report yet, is his presentation going to make sense?
Well, I think he's discussing sort of how the tax levy calculation works and how, although it looks like we have all this space available from us, sort of it's, I think kind of the fuzzy math of it. Now, I don't know then what recommendations he makes on top of that, that we could consider. But, I think just having him come in and review that with us, we'd at least be armed with that information.
Since I'm the one who suggested that, I think it's incumbent on us to understand, in this case, the nuts and bolts of how our taxes are calculated, simply because that's the issue that most town residents are concerned about. And Ed has done a pretty extensive job in terms of researching and understanding the impact. As most of you know, in the last few years, there's only been one time when we've had a Prop 2.5 override vote. And we've been able to raise taxes significantly in some cases without having to do a Prop 2.5 override, simply because of the way the taxes appeared to be calculated, particularly the personal property taxes. And so I think it's complicated, and I think Ed has become, I'm not going to use the word expert, but pretty well versed in it. And I think it would add to our knowledge and our understanding of when and where things happen and how things happen if we brought him in to review that paper with us and were able to ask him the questions that I know I had when I started looking at it.
Yeah, and I think it would make sense if we have our two new members, and in August may be aggressive for two new members, but as a kickoff meeting, if we had him there to discuss that. So I think, we can review that, because once we get into the fall, it's going to be nuts.
Yeah, I agree with you. We might as well just throw them in the deep end of the pool and let it happen. And I probably am being unkind to say that, but
No, you drink from the fire hose. That's what we all did, right? So I'll look at last year's calendar and throw a suggested date out there for mid to late-ish August and confirm it works for people. And then, I don't know if Michael, if you want to invite Ed, see if he has availability at that time.
yeah, I can do that.
Okay, so I'll try and track a date down.
Okay.
Another one is capital planning and potential changes to the process being considered and sort of where that's at. I think Andrew, you mentioned that one. Update on the status of the library project. The appropriate discussion of the appropriateness of using money from old warrant articles to cover new spending. And I think that's something the Board of Selectmen had discussed, disallowing and sort of, just following up and seeing if that happens and just confirming our agreement with that. And I don't know if folks have other future agenda items, and I guess our future agenda item for August is vice chair.
Right. When did the Board of Selectmen discuss it?
So I remember it, was it back in the fall? I'll take a look. I'll look back to Selectmen's minutes, because I know it was something that one of the selectmen brought up. And I don't know if it had ever got to a vote.
It came up, I'm sorry, Beth. It came up either one or two meetings, Board of Selectmen meetings, after that town meeting where we recommended against spending money for the new playground on the basis of what we just discussed. So I think it was in one of the first two meetings that the Board of Selectmen
During the fall.
Yeah,
during the
I don't recall what their position is, as far as I know.
right.
They haven't created a policy for us yet.
And Sean, we're going to
can I
keep the
just hop in?
staffing.
I just want to hop in for a second. It may be against policy, or they can set whatever policy they want, but I believe right now those amounts, because they've been authorized by town meeting, are on the books for the article, and I believe it takes town meeting action to do something with them. And so if there are any substantive discussions about that, please include me, because I'd want to be able to compare what's being discussed with what I think the process is.
Will do.
Sean, we're not going to drop the staffing study from future agenda, right?
No, that is still the top item here. And yes, so I think we want to see, I think folks have it. It's on the town website. I can get a copy of it and distribute it to everybody if they would like it. But really being able to, yes, determine what the recommendations were, and then, of course, finding out, what the town manager and departments, what action they're thinking of taking based on it. And my guess is whatever, hopefully whatever they're thinking of taking is, I think probably going to be pushed out here a little bit, but we want to know what it's going to be.
I think
Last I saw, it was still in draft form for comments. Did they do a final form, or are we still waiting for that, if anybody knows?
I haven't seen a final.
Okay.
Right.
And I do think it was kind of like, just because of circumstances, kind of like dropping news on Friday night, to avoid the press. I kind of got lost, I think, in the whole,
COVID.
other emergencies. Yeah. So I think we need to kind of force ourselves to get back into to reading it. It's really long. At least the draft was. I'm sure it will get only longer with comments, and there's a lot in there, and it's all suggestions. Some of it's impractical, and some of it's like out of left field in a good way or a bad way. Both probably.
Right.
May I also suggest we add an update on Pulte to the future agenda item?
Or a status report, yeah.
Sort of progress against projections and any changes in projections we think that there may be.
Yep, projected tax revenue.
And Sean, were you liaisons to any committees that you want to shed?
Well, yes, and I think for August, we need to look at, as vice chair, I was on like a couple of committees that I'll shed, but then, Jim and Terry's committees as well will come up for consideration. So, so that committee assignments will definitely be a topic for August.
Okay.
Okay. Excellent.
And if somebody can come up with a way we can let people know we want to talk, please.
See if we can figure that out. Any other future draft agenda items? I think that has us up to 8.
Sean, would you be able to just share the current committee assignments just as is, no editing? I have a version, but I also know that's being tweaked regularly. If the version that's on the shared drive is the latest version, I can certainly go there myself.
Let me send it out to everybody, because I think the last version I had updated back in the fall. So I will send that out to everybody. Committee assigned, current.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'd like to also put a future, but far future draft agenda is, I think there was some benefit to the presentations. I think we should talk about it to make sure everybody else agrees, but the joint presentations with the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, and other people all in one room, so that the presentations did seem to go more smoothly this year than sometimes in past years, as a result of the one long meeting.
Right. This is Paul. I agree. And also, given that we'll be getting new revenue projections and expense projections and school, changes. There's going to be either less or more likely more expense there because of the, the changes that have to happen and the operation of it. It might be more than one meeting, but it might still be good to keep the spirit of having it joint instead of three or four different committees meeting and getting either different information or bringing up different issues.
Okay. No, sounds good. The joint meeting, and that was, I believe, in January, in late January. Do we feel, I guess, given what's going on in the fall, is there a point to have a fall meeting, or?
That was my point, is that I would apply the same thinking, or at least try to.
Before we start the warrant article process, or somewhere in that process, that joint meeting was very helpful.
And there's going to be budget changes too, with especially the school. I think they're going to be coming for more money or something.
Okay, so is maybe a September meeting being proposed?
Yeah, or time. You can use the word timely meeting, because obviously we have an October budget. We have to see stuff beforehand, and we know we ask a lot of questions. So.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Any other future draft agenda items?
It's not a future draft agenda item. It's actually a John Arnold question, which is, now that we have successfully done a meeting during COVID, if things are still closed, can we pull off an October meeting, or is it dependent on the health of the community at the time, whether or not we can pull it off?
It'll be the same circumstances that we have before, which is that if in consultation with the selectmen and the Board of Health or others, if we feel we can safely have a town meeting, we will have a town meeting. If we can't, it will have to be postponed. The good news is that we have found that, at least given the circumstances in late June, we could get voters to sit and stay socially distant or physically distant and have their masks on. And the even better news is in October, it's almost certainly going to be cooler. I will be ever vigilant in seeing how things go. I think we'll be able to. I think how the town's numbers and how the town goes forward with its other meetings and other events and school reopening, we'll know. And I'll certainly, as I'm sure you will be too, Beth, in touch with the Board of Health. Once we get to August-ish, about like what's their sense. Because I'll have to make the call, sometime in October if we have to postpone it, So hoping for the best, but preparing for whatever happens.
Great. Thank you, John. Okay, Chairman and Committee Liaison Reports. I guess rather than go around the room, because I don't know how many we'll have, is there anybody who has any committee liaison reports?
This is Andrew, the Fail School Building Committee. There's an aggressive set of meetings happening right now as bids are being awarded to the union and the not union. It's to different groups of folks. And there's a concern about right now that there's features that may need to be pulled from the building because the current estimated bids are running a little high. There's a lot that still needs to be discussed, but the committee is still meeting weekly, at least bi-weekly, regularly, always, and also virtually. But there's still very aggressive activity happening to keep that project moving ahead and on budget.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Any public reminders for viewers? All right. With that, take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
So moved.
adjourn.
So moved. All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Brad?
All right. Now let's see here. Martha Beretti.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Bloomberg,
Blumberg, yes.
Mr. Hugel,
Yes.
and Terry, thank you very much for all your work on this committee. Hopefully when things become a little more normal, I'll call you up and we'll have a beer.
It sounds great. It's been a real pleasure working with all of you. I enjoyed it immensely.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
Terry.
all
You
of it.
too.
You too,
Terry.
Terry.
Tell you what, Terry, I'll let you go last. Mr. Bradley,
Bradley, yes.
Mr. Keough, yes. And finally, signing off, Mr. McGoldrick.
The hearty yes.
Thank you, sir.
Terry, and thank you everyone on the committee. I know that it turned into not only a long winter, but long winter, spring, and now summer, but thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you,
next
John.
time.
Great job, John. Thank you.
Thanks.
Night.
Night.
Cheers.
Night.
Good night all.